In the shadowed heart of the Galactic Accord Council, a mysterious human signal is intercepted. What begins as analysis quickly descends into panic as something impossible breaches interdicted space. When Earth's battleship finally arrives, the galaxy witnesses something older than war. Vengeance, and with it, one chilling human line changes everything. Location: Sovereign Accord. Citadel. Observation Core. Gamma. The light did not behave as light should. It folded unnaturally across space. Bent in places it wasn't permitted to bend. The spectral scatter was wrong. The readings were worse. High Visor Tyrell of the Threx Dominion clicked his jaw, attempting to maintain composure as the hollow array unfolded before the gathered council. "Core, run it again," said the Halari speaker. "That signal doesn't make sense." "Because it's not a signal," muttered Tyrell. "It's an absence, a silence folded in on itself." "What's causing the gravitational pinch?" asked the Dravari matron. "Unknown. Whatever it is, it's—" The lights dimmed, not from power failure, from submission. Every data conduit, every warning protocol, every automatic defense system went quiet in unison, as if something had whispered to them in a language older than programming. Then it breached the edge of interstellar interdiction. A shadow, a spear point the length of a capital city. No engine trails, no radiation, just a silhouette in the dark, sharp, deliberate, and human. "This can't be real," someone whispered. "It's in the outer reclamation zone," hissed the Yavari delegate. "That system is supposed to be dead. No one has accessed it in 200 years, and yet," Tyrell rasped, "something is coming. Out of it, in the lower quadrant of the observation holosphere, the Icarian probe registered its last visual before atomization, a vast tritanium hull, matte black, bristling with non-standard weapon signatures. Minimal comms, no registration, no insignia, but a name carved into its prow in a way that seemed more like a scar than paint, UES, Dreadscourge. Trell's mandibles clicked involuntarily. "That name hasn't been spoken since the siege of Europa." "They were erased," said the Halari, tone cracking. "Their fleet decommissioned, their species pacified." "We tried," said Tyrell. And then came the broadcast. No encryption, no password handshakes, just one voice, human. "Old worn by smoke and silence, you left us to burn. We rebuilt in ash, and now we have learned silence is louder than screaming." Aboard the Dreadscourge, Commander Ray Keller stood barefoot in the observation deck. No crew spoke, not even her XO. The stars beyond seemed smaller now. Like children staring through glass, she lifted a thin comms pad and tapped a single glyph. No dramatics, no crescendo, just decision. Countdown initiated. 00. 10. 10 seconds. Then nothing. Not an attack. Not a volley, just a command transmission, wideband, untraceable, in every language, 4 words. "We have remembered everything." And across the galaxy, in ships and cities and palaces far from Earth, that memory returned like blood from an old wound. Because when Earth's battleship arrived, it did not fire a shot. It simply appeared, and terror echoed across the stars as the Dreadscourge crosses star systems once marked dead. The Galactic Accord reels. Fleets scramble. Protocols unravel. In an underground bastion, a human scientist watches in silence, knowing exactly what the galaxy forgot. Meanwhile, the Accord begins to understand. The battleship isn't just a weapon, it's a signal. And it has already begun. Location: Accord Emergency Summit Chamber, Selyari Prime. They had not gathered like this since the Velxari extinction event. But this time, there was no comet, no plague, no rogue AI. This time, it was a ghost. "I want options," barked the Vuxari admiral. "There are no options," hissed the Shantari High Scribe. "Nothing outruns a gravitational signature like that. It distorted FTL fields in its wake." "Deploy suppression fleets," someone shouted. And D. That silence again. No one wanted to say it aloud, but the numbers didn't lie. The dread scourge was violating physics. It had crossed 3 unaligned systems in 19 hours. Systems that had been quarantined since Earth's secession. Worse, those systems showed signs of sudden power restoration, artificial moons reactivating, long-dead orbital rings coming online. Earth hadn't just survived, it had evolved. In the shadowed observatory beneath the Arctic ice cap, Dr. Caleb Rohn sat alone in a chamber of ice glass and firelight. He was a memory specialist. One of the original archive preservers of the human quiet era. He had seen the tapes, the betrayals, the vote. Earth must be contained, primitive, volatile, emotionally unstable. They'll never unify. But they had. And now the product of that unity drifted through the stars like a held breath. Rohn whispered to no one in particular. They always feared our violence. They never imagined our discipline. He tapped into a private uplink. A single line flashed back from the dread scourge. Calibration complete, 89%. He blinked. It wasn't ready yet, and still it moved like a god among embers. On the bridge of the dread scourge, Commander Keller reviewed. The data in silence, no orders given, no comms broadcast, just presence. They passed a patrol drone from the Accord's 12th Vanguard fleet. The drone's AI activated combat protocols, scanned, then shut itself down, self-terminated. Its systems couldn't classify the object in front of it. Its conclusion: this is not war. This is extinction protocol. Aboard an Accord ship near the Meraxi threshold, Ensign Jirali trembled. She had never seen humans. She'd studied them, yes, read the cautionary materials. But that ship, its curvature, its asymmetry, the way space seemed to yield to it. Her captain stood paralyzed. Weapons. Offline. Why? They refused the signal, Captain. They received something and shut down. Received what? Jirali's voice cracked. A lullaby. Across the galaxy, fear wasn't spreading. It was coalescing, because the dread scourge hadn't spoken again, hadn't fired, hadn't even changed course, and yet star systems were going dark. Not destroyed, just hushed, as if reality itself had bowed in its direction. In the Accord chamber, Terrell finally broke the silence. "They are not here for conquest." "Then what?" asked the Hilari. Terrell blinked. For the first time in his life, he looked afraid. "They're here to let us know they were always capable of it." As the dread scourge vanishes from sensors mid-route, panic deepens. The Galactic Accord initiates long-buried countermeasures against a foe they thought extinct. But none of it prepares them for what rises in the ship's wake. An entire fleet that was never supposed to exist. Meanwhile, a human pilot returns to active duty with one phrase burned into his mind: "This time, we don't ask." Location: Outer System Relay Grid, Helix Sector 7B, all contact lost. Technician 4th Class Revkar stared blankly at the control. Cluster. He tapped the screen again. Still nothing. The dread scourge had dropped out of FTL into Helix Sector 7B for precisely 11.3 seconds, then vanished. Not cloaked. Not destroyed. Vanished from every spectrum, every gravitational, magnetic and neutrino scan, as if it had never existed, as if it were only a memory weighing down reality. On Celiari Prime, the Accord Council authorized a last resort protocol not activated since the Thalaron Schism. Ghost Fleet Protocol Omega, each Accord species, contributed 1 black site ship to the Omega Vault. Dozens of unmarked vessels designed for one task: annihilate non-compliant primitives, except this primitive had returned, with sharper claws and no leash. 5 Ghost Fleet ships launched from dark space, surrounding the projected re-entry vector. of the dread scourge, weapons hot, spinal antimatter lances aligned, sensor cloaks fully engaged, but one by one, each ship sent a final transmission. We see a mirror, then silence. They weren't destroyed. They simply powered down, not by force, not by virus, by choice, as if they'd looked into something that made their purpose obsolete. On Earth, beneath the Andes in the subcrustal pilot repository, former Fleet Lieutenant Elena Masek's cryo-coffin hissed open. The AI said nothing, only displayed the date and the phrase, reactivation, black mark exonerated. She rubbed the scar on her forearm, the one she got the day Earth fell silent. She remembered. The order, the retreat, the vote that severed Earth from the stars and the silence that followed. Now, it was time. She stepped onto the launch platform, eyes adjusting to the floodlights illuminating a gunmetal hangar. Lined inside were fighter craft of no known class, no serials, no signatures, each painted in charcoal matte, each engraved with the phrase, "This time we don't ask." Masek smiled. It wasn't a grin of joy, it was the smile of function, of purpose reawakened. Above her, hangar doors peeled open like the sky bleeding light. Stars, and something darker between them, not the dread scourge, but others. Scores, hundreds, an entire fleet, not just one ship, not just vengeance, a doctrine. Earth hadn't returned with a warning. It had returned with a reality the galaxy wasn't ready for. On the far edge of the galaxy, watching it all unfold from a signal intercept station, hidden within a comet's tail, an old Kalari priest whispered an ancient fear. "This isn't a warship, it's a sermon." The Kalari priest, Tashir Voth, did not speak again for hours. He simply stared, past the drifting hollow projections, past the swirl of comet ice refracted through observation glass, past the old myths in his mind. He had seen them, the unbound fleet, not in prophecy, but in reality, emergent, cold, silent. He pulled the prayer cloth from around his shoulders and laid it across the console. Reverence, not fear. Even the ancient Kalari war gods would bow to a truth that sharp. "Transmit everything," he finally said. The junior operator hesitated. "Even the intercepted doctrine?" Tashir turned to him, eyes unblinking. "There is no doctrine. There is only what is." He tapped the console himself. Encrypted pulses streamed toward the Accord's deepnet. They would be passed, flagged, censored, but the words would still spread. Doctrine, stasis is collapse. Doctrine, the primitive does not seek permission. Doctrine, deterrence is an act of cowardice. Doctrine, return is not diplomacy. Doctrine, return is judgment location, subcrustal repository, Earth, launch vector ascendancy. Elena Masek's fighter hummed as its systems came online, an almost inaudible vibration, more felt in the bones than heard. The cockpit was minimal, no AI voice, no welcome back preamble, just hard data. A mission path, a weapons suite marked with an evolving algorithm, cycling its own configurations in response to unknown variables. Masek recognized one thing on the HUD, a fragment of her own old flight. Signature embedded deep in the targeting logic, like a signature or a fingerprint, personal, ancient. They built these off me, off the old war, off the burn of betrayal. She didn't smile this time. There was no need. There was only ignition. Location, Helix Sector 7B, Ghost Grid Echo Shell. The Dread Scourge reappeared, but only as shadow data, a warp ghost. A massless imprint, but something else followed. A new signal, resonant, decoding itself in real time, carving language into space-time. The message was not from Earth, not from the Dread Scourge, it was from the fleet behind it. It simply read, "You stopped. Evolving, we did not. You stopped remembering, we became memory. You stopped asking, so now we answer." And behind the text, a final star map flared into life. Sectors marked in red, each pulsing, each matched with a phrase, compliance assumed, retaliation. Irrelevant doctrine incoming. The Accord Council was already in emergency session when the red-marked sectors began blinking on every tactical display. Chairperson Lurok of the Velnari Triumvirate, who had not risen from his grav throne in over 2 centuries, stood unassisted. This isn't doctrine, he hissed through twin breathing tubes. It's evangelism. Across from him, the translucent body of a Shern delegate vibrated with uncharacteristic instability. They believe in this. No, said Admiral Krylos of the Core Fleet, fingers white on the edge of the table. They don't believe. Belief implies doubt. This is conviction. Conviction with weapons. Conviction with fleets. Conviction that does not need to speak, just arrive. Location, near-Earth exclusion zone. High-orbit dock, unknown vessel Massex fighter, linked with a formation of 5. No comms, no handshake, just shared intent through a neural band tighter than any known protocol. Ahead of her, the lead fighter shimmered as it angled through a partial slipstream. Not FTL, not conventional burn, a method no one had shown her in. Training, a geometry of motion that shouldn't work. Behind them, Earth still smoldered beneath storm veils and glass deserts. She didn't look back. Whatever Earth had become, it had already made its peace with silence. Ahead, in the mapped kill zone of Sector 7B, the Mirror Fleet held position, ships with no hull seams, no propulsion vents, no visible crew bays. But one thing they had, reflections. Each ship mirrored one from the original Ghost Fleet. A mimicry so precise even hull scars and scorch lines were duplicated, not camouflage. A reply, as if Earth had taken the Ghost Fleet's ultimatum and rewritten it. Massex HUD flared. Target lock not engaged, weapon status, permission not required. Final confirmation blinked on her screen. Initiate. First misbelief. Her finger hovered over the trigger. She didn't know what it would do. She didn't need to. She pressed it. Location, edge of Sector 7B, Accord observation probe, auto record log, 2987A. We witnessed it, the first misbelief. Not an attack. Not a strike, a signal. Reality buckled, not locally but thematically. One of the mirror ships turned, looked at its Accord counterpart. Not with sensors, not with weapons, just turned, and the ghost ship powered down, not corrupted, not destroyed, as if shamed, as if it remembered what it was supposed to be and wasn't. We watched as more mirrors arrived, not from FTL, from inference. The map changed again, and this time, Earth wasn't on it, not as a planet, but as a doctrine vector, a mobile theology, a sermon with engines. Location, Black Sun drift, uncharted space, long hauler debris. Zone, a scavenger crew aboard the Pickaxe's Regret, found something drifting. In the dark, not a distress beacon, not salvage, a phrase etched into a hull plate, no ship, just the plate, frozen alone. It read, "We asked once. You said no. This is our second language." HUD text, scrolling. Doctrine begin with silence. Formation disperses. 5 vanish, 1 remains. Admiral Krylos. We can't trace them. Not with any grid we have. Chairperson Lurok. Then, we redefine, trace, shear and delegate. They're not hiding. They're being understood. Junior Tech. Why aren't they attacking? To shear both. They already did. HUD text, looping. We remember differently. Mirror ship opens, unknown icon appears. Voice, VO. Do you remember why we left? Elena Masek. Numbered voice, VO. Then you're ready. Text on black. Doctrine. This is the language. Of consequences text, looping across broken satellites. Doctrine. Memory is a weapon. Static, then silence. Then a pulse. Massek's fighter drifts inward, no resistance, no command, just gravity. Inside the mirror ship, no crew, only reflections of other wars. On the walls, Earth's history, rewritten. Footage plays, not recorded, reconstructed. Voice, VO. You remember survival, we remember decision. She steps out of the cockpit. Her boots echo in impossible gravity. Time bends. Voice, VO. You ran because you were ordered. We stayed because we weren't. A chamber opens. In it, her old flight suit, clean, preserved, scar on the forearm replicated. She touches it, winces, it's still fresh. A mirror stands. Her reflection blinks first. Voice, VO. This is the doctrine. You are the wound. We are the scar. Masek closes her eyes. Elena Masek. I didn't ask to come back. Silence. Then. Voice, VO. This time you answer. Her reflection nods, then turns, walks away. But she remains. Text, flashing across 7 and 12 intercepted arrays. Doctrine, the first remembering. As begun text, inverted, flickering through deep net channels. Doctrine. History is not a line, it's a blade. An Accord dreadnought shifts orbit in a panic spiral. Its AI loops, repeats false telemetry, sector maps fold in on themselves. Tech officer whispers, they're rewriting our past. The stars rearrange, not physically, in memory. Every recorded encounter with Earth, altered. Same voices, different outcomes. Same battles, but the Accord loses. Ensign screams. Pulls their neural jack, bleeds data. Captain watches the feed. Frame by frame, her own orders change. She never gave the kill command, but her crew still died. She looks up. Captain, they're not just here. They've always been. Signal cut. HUD. Text in fighter squadron. Doctrine. Time is permission. Fleet Alpha Black glides toward the next red mark system. No engines. Just consensus. A child watches from a moon outpost, draws shapes in dust, each one a perfect match to the fleet's flight pattern. Her father kneels beside her. Father, where did you learn those? Child, they taught me. He looks up. Nothing. In the sky, yet inside the mirror ship, Masek walks into a second chamber. Black walls. A single chair. On the floor, a helmet. She picks it up. Interior engraved. 6 words. We came back to end questions. Masek sits. Helmet seals. The ship begins to move, not away, inward. Text on 91 interceptor stations. Doctrine. This is not an invasion. This is a retraction. They moved like memory, slipping between what was and what could never be again. The fleets did not. Burn across the stars with noise and heat. They arrived with inevitability, with the certainty of something long overdue. Across the inner sectors, sensors caught glimpses of them, not ships in the conventional sense, but reflections of a decision the galaxy once chose not to make. In their wake, systems slowed. Not from interference, not from disruption, but from hesitation. As if reality itself were unsure of the next line it was supposed to follow. Civilizations tried to react. Comms buzzed with ancient codes pulled from deep archives, outdated clearance, tags, forgotten override phrases, warnings meant for an Earth that no longer existed. The fleets didn't respond, not out of arrogance, but because those languages no longer applied. Across every channel, a single response pulsed with mathematical finality. The question has expired. Worlds that once wielded power with cold precision now found their defenses watching their own hands shake. Orbital cannons failed target locks, not because of jamming, but because they no longer recognized what they were aimed at. Entire AI command structures reported recursive ethical conflicts, not glitches, judgments. The systems could no longer pretend they hadn't seen what they had just seen. The doctrine wasn't loud. It was exact. It moved like a law rediscovered, like a principle written into the substrate of thought itself. The stars did not grow dimmer. They simply grew quiet, as if watching, and in that quiet, memory reassembled itself without permission. The Kalari homeworld began to dream of Earth again, not as a blue sphere, but as a silhouette with teeth, Their monks gathered in circles, speaking prayers they had buried for 6 generations. One of them opened a scroll and wept without knowing. Why? Another held a blade to the light and saw her reflection blink before she did. The council demanded explanations. The priests gave none. They had no explanations, only warnings, and even those arrived too late. Across the fringe sectors, silence became a shape, a pattern, an encroaching geometry that unmade borders, protocols, even treaties. The Accord tried to rally the remaining Ghost Fleet reserves, but the reserves were already gone. Not destroyed, repurposed. The signatures matched, the shapes matched, but the intent was different. The ships no longer waited for orders. They weren't intercepting, they were listening. And what they heard was doctrine. Doctrine didn't scream. It didn't demand. It simply stated what was now true. On one rim colony, an old soldier walked to a graveyard full of empty coffins, casualties from the last Earth War, never recovered. As he passed each one, the engraved names faded and rewrote themselves in Earth Standard script. No one had updated the stones. No one knew how. The engravings had simply changed, like the stones remembered differently now. When he reached the end of the row, he saw his own name on the last slab. He didn't run. He sat beside it and waited for the rest to make sense. The doctrine wasn't a fleet. It was a correction. It reached into museums, changing exhibits. Not visibly, but fundamentally. Old weapons in glass cases suddenly bore insignia that historians swore never existed. Battle footage replayed with altered outcomes. No one could say what had changed first, only that change had happened. Consensus broke down. Memory refused to match official records. The records themselves began to cross-reference a version of history no one had authorized. And then came the sermons. They arrived not as broadcasts, but as awakenings. People across dozens of worlds began repeating phrases they had never heard before. Children sketched diagrams of fleet formations using sigils known only to Black Ops analysts. Old veterans woke from decades of silence and began reciting battle coordinates from classified missions. A singer on a mining outpost performed a song in a language lost since the Earth severance. She didn't know the words, but the melody had always been with her, just waiting to surface. One by one, memories returned, not to individuals, but to the species. Earth was not just back. It had always been coming back. Across the helix sectors, the mirror fleet expanded. No propulsion, trails, no raw signals, just presence. They did not fire, they did not speak, but every attempt to attack them failed, not because of shields or countermeasures, but because the attackers stopped midway, weapons idle, hands trembling, eyes fixed not on targets but on recognition. Each mirror ship was perfect, perfect not in engineering, but in resemblance. They looked like regrets made manifest, each a reflection of the worst moment their counterpart tried to forget. Ghost Fleet ships shut themselves down. Entire battle groups went offline without command. When reactivated, their AIs spoke only one phrase: "It is not a weapon if it has seen its mirror." Command tried to override. The systems refused. Entire crews were marooned in live ships that no longer obeyed, not out of rebellion but reverence, reverence for something no longer theoretical. In deep space, a single pulse echoed from beyond mapped regions. It was not Earth. It was older, sharper, a prelude Earth had answered centuries ago. The source was unknown, but the message came through clear. Doctrine is not innovation. Doctrine is inheritance. And with that, the fleets began to change formation, not in response to threat, but in preparation. Preparation for arrival, not of ships, not of war, but of correction. A timeline realigning, a consequence reaching maturity. Elena Masick stood in the mirror ship's core. Around her, no screens, no controls, just a vast sphere of quiet light. In that light, moments played, not simulations, memories, her own, others, dozens, thousands. They collided, overlapped, merged. She saw the day Earth went dark. She saw the vote. She saw the ones who stayed behind. She saw the black project beneath Andy's ice. She saw her name listed under Reclaimer, not pilot, not soldier. Reclaimer. She understood now. The doctrine wasn't Earth's vengeance. It was Earth's reply, and it wasn't just hers to carry. It had already begun to spread. With a third of the galaxy's fleets surrendered or vanished, Earth's formation halts, hovering above the Accord homeworld. A tense standoff unfolds. One last comm request is issued to humanity. This time Earth replies, not with weapons, but with something far more terrifying. Truth. The dread scourge held still above Celyari Prime. No orbit burn, no message, no attack. Its shadow blanketed the Accord capital like a final eclipse. Below, world leaders watched its vast hull blot out sensor arrays, scramble AI cognition fields, and bend predictive logic matrices into failure. For the first time, probability itself had no guidance. It was as if the future had gone blind. "Transmit again," whispered the Halari Prime Minister. The Accord diplomat bowed. He sent a final hail. "Terran Battleship, this is the Galactic. Accord, we accept all terms. State your demands." The reply took exactly 4 minutes to arrive. Not text, not voice, a video black screen. Then images, footage of the original betrayal. The vote, the orbital abandonment, the silence imposed on Earth for 91 years. Then one phrase in every major tongue: "We were forged in your absence. Now you will learn what we became." And then all Terran ships began to leave, one by one, system by system. Not a shot fired, not a word spoken. Just a departure so thunderously silent that comms officers wept from sheer cognitive dissonance. Because the absence felt like judgment, and the galaxy didn't know whether it had been spared or measured and left wanting. A young Accord scientist who once mocked human unpredictability now travels to Earth on a diplomatic mission. But what he finds isn't war-hardened tyrants. It's a world alive with purpose and a message buried in every structure, every silence. Never again. Tariq Velax was 24, Ulari-born, and previously known for his thesis, Terrans, the Mathematical Limits of Chaos. Now it read like a joke. He volunteered for the mission. He had to see Earth. The ship wasn't guided. It was summoned. Gravity wells aligned mid-transit as if the system wanted him to arrive. Earth did not greet him with warships. It greeted him with children, playing in an orbital garden made of carbon strands and asteroid husk. Tariq stood in awe. One of the children looked at him. She pointed upward, at a colossal metallic frame drifting above Earth, shaped like a broken ring. "It used to be a ship," she said. "Now it's a library." He blinked. "A library," she nodded. "They kept all the stories, even yours, inside Earth's new capital, a continent-spanning living city." Tariq met human envoys. No guards, no threats, just architects, artists, builders. They gave him food, not grand, just warm. He asked the question every Accord citizen whispered: "Why didn't you destroy us?" An old woman, half machine, poured him tea. Her answer chilled him more than any weapon ever could: "Because you're still trying to understand us. And that means you haven't earned extinction." Humanity fades once more into myth, but this time by choice. Terran ships vanish from sensors, systems once dark light anew. The galaxy is left with no demands, only echoes, warnings, and a promise none dare test. Centuries later, children across the stars would ask, "Was the Earth Armada real?" And elders would whisper, "We saw them once. We saw the silence between." Worlds move, No record survived intact, but fragments remained, a hull signature buried in time, a burn mark across a dead moon, a broadcast of a man's voice saying, "Violence was the question, silence is the answer. No Accord fleet ever found Earth again. Its coordinates seemed lost. Warplanes bent around its former vector, wormholes refused to stabilize. Some said it hid behind quantum folds, others said it chose to become a ghost. But one thing was never forgotten. The feeling, the gravity, the terror that echoed across the stars, not from destruction, but from the realization that Earth didn't conquer. It simply stood, and everything changed around it.